morning, everyone. Hopefully you can see and hear us. We will start in around about 1 minute. Okay, it's just after 10 o'clock. There are still people entering the room, but there is quite a bit to get through, so we'll make a start. So good morning, everyone. It's great to be with you this morning, introducing our 2024-2025 FFT and GL assessment, Key Stage 4 assessment service for secondary schools. This is around about 3 or 4 years in a row now. I think we've been joined by our friends at GL and worked really closely together and enhanced our services, working closely with our colleagues and friends over at GL Assessment. And there are some brand new updates that we're going to share with you today. So just before we get into the meat of the session, it is being recorded, so you will be able to access this afterwards. And if you want to share it with colleagues, there will be a link to the recording sent to you. No images of any delegates will be captured, though, in the recording. We've muted all the microphones, but please do use the Q&A section to raise any questions throughout the sessions. Now, Sean, Sophie, and I will be able to answer some of those questions when we're not presenting, but what we will do is we'll come back at the end and bring any of those frequent questions that are coming up. We'll answer those towards the end. The slides will also be emailed out, so please don't make notes. You will get a copy of the slides. If there's anything specific about your school, please don't put that in the Q&A. If you do have any specific school queries, please put those into an email and send them to our support team, or you can call the number at the bottom there and just choose option 2. Okay, just for the agenda, and previous years, what we've liked to do to sort of open the session is just give you a bit of information about that new year 7 who have just arrived recently in school. I'm sure it feels a long time ago, the start of the term, but we'll give you a bit of information from what we know from our results services for Key Stage 2 in 2024 about the performance of those cohorts. We'll then look at 2025 and 2026 Key Stage 4 progress measures and how we'll be approaching that in the absence of data from the DfE. I want to do a bit of a recap on attendance. We all know how important attendance is and the focus on attendance nationally, from the department and from Ofsted and from yourselves and schools, everybody working with schools, the focus on getting pupils into school and reducing the absence rates across the country since the pandemic, and we'll look at how that's impacted attendance. I'm then going to hand over to Sophie from GL, who's going to talk you through getting the most out of your Cat4 tests. Sean will then pick it up at the end there. He's going to show you how to use your new dynamic estimates within FFT and generate those estimates almost instantly. And he'll talk a bit more about the vocationals that were just released yesterday, the Cat4 vocational estimates, and then go through some of the updates to the system as well that have been added since last year. Okay, so just to start, this is looking at 3 years worth of data, but we're looking at 2019 pre-pandemic and then 2023 and 2024, the percentage of pupils reaching the expected standard in reading, writing and maths at Key Stage 2 nationally to start off with. So you can see at the bottom there, we've looked at the national picture and you can see 65% of pupils reached the expected standard in reading, writing and maths in 2019. We know there's been an impact since the pandemic, and you can see that the last 2 years it's 60%. So it's stayed quite stable, and it's still a fair bit behind where it was pre-pandemic. Lots of people attending today, and you'll be from lots of different areas around the country. So what we wanted to do is just look at how that differs throughout the country, and this will be meaningful for depending on where you're based. I think the key one to pick out is London at the top there, where you can see this year it's 67%. It was 71 in 2019 pre-pandemic. It is 67 now, and the rest of the country is broadly in line, anything between sort of 58% and 61%. But it's the London you can see where there's the big difference in the expected standard, which existed pre-pandemic as well, where you can see there. We know the overall picture. We've got 4 years worth of data there. So as we saw in the previous slide, it's 65% in 2019, reading, writing and maths combined, and then 59%, 60%, and then using the data that we've collected this year from primary schools, we're also staying at 60%. But what does that mean for different subjects? Are they all the same? Are there some subjects vary? Well, we can see there, looking at reading, writing and maths, that reading is actually broadly in line to where it was in 2019. There's very little change there. It actually went up in 2022, but you'd say it's broadly in line across those 4 years. It's very different for writing and maths, where you can see 79% and then around about 72, 73%. And sort of the biggest impact there, I think, if you can look at the greater depth or the higher standard in the pink purple color there, you can see that it's a lot lower for writing since the pandemic. And we can speculate on some of these reasons. Obviously, accessing reading from home is a lot easier than accessing maths or writing. You could also talk about the catch up and the funding centrally around reading. Maybe that's had an impact there. I wanted to pick up and talk a little bit more about the SEND pupils and look at the performance of SEND pupils. There's a lot of focus, obviously, on the disadvantaged group, but I wanted to just pick out some data on SEN support and those pupils that are in receipt of an education healthcare plan. Now, you can see at the bottom there, those pupils that are on no SEN, around about 7 in 10 pupils achieve the expected standard or above in reading, writing and maths. What does that look like for those pupils in receipt of SEN support? Well, you can see it's 26%. So, 2 or 3 pupils in 10 that are in receipt of SEN support actually go on to achieve the expected standard in reading, writing and maths. What about those in receipt of an education healthcare plan? And you can see that goes down to around about 1 in 10 pupils that achieve the expected standard, and a very small amount of pupils there, around about 1%, achieve the greater depth or the higher standard. And just the one to pick up when you're looking at the higher standard as well, you can see for writing for those pupils on an education healthcare plan, it's much lower than it is in both maths and in reading. And let's unpick those figures for those SEN pupils, looking at the tested subjects of maths and reading. So we've looked at the data for those that aren't in receipt of SEND support, and you can see it's 84% across maths and reading that achieve the expected standard or greater depth. And that reduces when you look at those pupils on SEND support, and you can see it's around about 45, 46, 47% across maths and reading. But you can then see that there's a big increase there in the pupils that actually access the test but do not meet the expected standard, around about 50% across both reading and maths. But what about the picture for those pupils receipt of an education healthcare plan? And you can see actually there, the dark figures there, the grey figures, the grey shading, is actually pupils that were working below the level of the test, did not actually take the test. And that's around about 50% of pupils on an education healthcare plan that don't actually take the test because they're typically on the engagement model or previous to that on the P scales. I've left this slide in. We will update this slide with the 2024 figures, but the picture is very, very similar. And this is looking at the absence rates of pupils when they're in year 6. So this is your current year 8, and it's looking at the absence rates across year 6 for these pupils. So you've got the percentage of pupils vertically and horizontally, the percentage absence in year 6. And that's the 2019 figures. But when we look at 2023, you can actually see for those that are with a lower level of absence, it's actually reduced. But you can see as you move along to the right-hand side, where that's reduced, all of these with increased percentage of absence has gone up since the pandemic. And just a little bit of a summary there, but 15% of those year 6, so current year 8, and we believe this is very similar for the current year 7 from when they were in year 6. So 15% were persistent absentees in 2023, and compare that to 7% in 2019. So it's doubled since the pandemic. Why do we talk so much about attendance and the impact that it has on performance? Well, we'll look here at the average Progress 8 score by the percentage absence in year 10 and 11 from the 2023 performance tables information. So along the bottom there, you've got the percentage of sessions missed due to absence in year 10 and year 11. And we're going to plot the average Progress 8 score. So for those with less than 1% of absence, you can see the average Progress 8 score is plus 0.68, so over half a grade above. And just to sort of paint the picture, you can see how that changes. The more frequently you're absent, as I'm sure you're all aware, the bigger impact it has on average on your performance at the end of Key Stage 4. And you can pick out the pupils at the bottom there, so those severely absent pupils with 50% or more absence, around about 2.5 grades below where they would be. I do want to focus on this group. There's a lot of focus around those between sort of 5 and 15% and trying to sort of push those pupils into that next bracket up, that 1 to 5%. And you could see by doing that, you'd see the impact that it would have on those Progress 8 scores. If they were moved into that band above and that absence was addressed and pupils were attending more, you'd be able to see how that would impact performance for the end of Key Stage 4. So 2025 Key Stage 4 progress measures. We will be using the KS4 data from all of those schools that took part with their year 7 cohorts at the start of the pandemic. We'll be able to provide progress measures in the absence of those centrally provided progress measures from the department. So as I've mentioned, it won't be published. There is no basis for progress measures from Key Stage 2, but we will be working closely with our colleagues and friends at GL Assessment to provide you with a new progress measure, which we're calling here KS4 to Progress 8, that is similar in nature to Progress 8. And we'll use the similar methodology that's used by the DFE to calculate Progress 8 and all the separate pillars of Progress 8. And then for other indicators, including subjects, we'll use the typical FFT style value added measures, and we'll use the KS4 across all the different batteries, the gender and the month of birth of pupils to calculate that value added information. We'll assign pupils to prior attainment groups, just as they do with Key Stage 2 data with the DFE, and we'll use the mean CAT score and we'll round that to the nearest whole number. We'll make a call on how many prior attainment groups there'll be, but it's likely that there'll be for every integer between 80 and 120, which is more than the usual 34 prior attainment groups, so it's more granular, but we will use some banding at the lower and the upper extremes where there are fewer pupils. What is the sort of foundation for using CAT towards a Progress 8 or Attainment 8 measure? So along the bottom there, you've got the prior attainment groups based on the mean year 7 CAT information, so ranging from 73 through to 132, and then we'll plot that against the Attainment 8 score, the mean Attainment 8 score, and we'll use the 2023 data just to sort of demonstrate this. And what you can see there is it's a great foundation for predicting that and actually using as a prior attainment basis for future performance. The higher the scores you get in your mean year 7 cats, the higher the scores you tend to get in attainment 8. I want to unpick it a little bit more though, and what I wanted to show you here is obviously you can see along the bottom is progress 8 and going up is the KS4 to progress 8. Now we've done this using the data of around about 530 schools that had 50 or more pupils that had KS4 data. And you can see the correlation between the progress 8 and the KS4 to progress 8 is very, very strong across the vast majority of schools there. There are a couple of things I wanted to pick out though. So we can see, yeah, very strong correlation. But if we look at these schools here, so progress 8 score of around about 0, but using the CAT to progress 8 for the same cohort within that school, you'd see it's just about minus, say around 0.8. And then the flip side, another school here with progress 8 score of 0, but it's around about 0.8 positive when using the CAT data. The key thing here is, all I want to sort of point out is really strong correlation, but they are different tests and they are differences in what you might see. So a quick update on our estimates. We've updated our estimates. These actually went live yesterday, and Sean will talk a little bit more about some of these updates in the session a bit later. One thing I wanted to pick up though is we're looking at the year 11 2025 cohort in the pink here and the CAT scores by that cohort. And then the line going through there, the dark line, is year 11 2023. And you're looking at the bottom there is the year 7 CAT score. And then we're looking at the cumulative percentage of pupils achieving those different scores. And what we wanted to sort of pick out here was the gap here. And all we're looking at is saying that the mean score for current year 11, when they took their CATs in year 7, was actually below what you'd typically see and what we actually see for that cohort that finished year 11 in 2023. So bearing in mind what we've seen with that cohort in 2023, and we know the data that's coming through for 2024 from schools as well, and we'll get obviously the full published data for that as well. What we've done is we've adjusted these estimates to take into account current performance. So we've increased this so you can see a truer reflection of those estimates from what we typically see from pupils taking the tests. And then just by increasing those, you can see the impact. It's brought it broadly in line now with where it is in 2023. So we've increased our estimates to take into account that lower performance from the cohort that took those tests in year 7 at the time of the pandemic. The last thing I want to touch upon is we've talked about the estimates and how we use them in our target setting area. I just wanted to pick up about how we will also be using them in our Aspire pupil tracking system. Now, around about 1,900 schools have taken part so far in our early results service, which used our new tracking system this year. It will be available for current year 10 and current year 11. So you'll be able to start assessing those pupils and then comparing their performance and predictions to their estimates on the basis of the KS4 data. So you'll be able to continually track and monitor. Very, very soon in the next couple of weeks, it'll be year 10 and year 11. And then later this term, you'll also be able to look at the Key Stage 3 cohorts as well through our tracking system. And that'll use its own schemas as well as looking at the 9:1 scale as well. If you haven't took part in this and you still want to, there is time. You can just upload your data and get it into the system for the early results. But as I say, you'll be able to look, and in the absence of the Key Stage 2 estimates, you'll be able to compare to the estimates on the basis of the KS4 data across all cohorts. And that's just picking up, obviously, you'll be able to see the difference between the performance that you enter into the system and the estimates. And then you can see there at the bottom, it's just saying that the KS4 estimates aren't yet available. They are coming soon. As I say, over the next couple of weeks, they should be there for years 10 and 11. And then that'll be rolled out as well for years 7, 8, and 9 later this term. And you can look at subject level information as well. So the example here is looking at maths. So if you wanted to look and monitor maths performance over time for current cohorts, you'd be able to track that alongside the estimates as well. We can produce you some national information on the basis of the 2024, which is using 1,825 schools nationally. And we'll update that with the national data when we receive it from the DFE, but you'll be able to monitor that performance and predictions alongside the estimates based on KS4, and you'll be able to look at the different challenge levels of FFT 50, FFT 20, and FFT 5, and then look at the difference between that performance or prediction and the estimates on the basis of KS4. That's everything from me today. I will start looking at the Q&As, and if there's questions coming through, we'll answer those and we'll pick some of those at the end. But I'm delighted to introduce you to Sophie from GL, who'll talk to you about getting the best out of those KS4 tests. Over to you, Sophie.
Could you just allow my video, please, Craig or Sean? It won't let me turn it on.
Of course.
Okay, thank you so much, and good morning, everybody. Thank you for being with us. It's really exciting to be able to talk to you about KS4 this morning. Just going to share my screen. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you about how to get the most out of your KS4 data. Many of you obviously are using KS4 and providing that information to FFT to get your estimates. And I wanted to explain to you in a bit more detail. I understand we've got a mix of people who are already using KS4 and quite familiar with it, and a lot of people as well who've not used KS4 before and interested to find out about it. So GL assessment, for those of you that haven't heard of us, we've been a trusted provider of standardised assessments for over 40 years, and we've worked with a network of experts and research bodies to provide world-leading high-quality assessments and data analytics. We continue to invest in the development of meaningful assessment data to provide teachers with a whole pupil approach to supporting success, and using tests of ability and attainment and barriers to learning. One of our driving values is supporting colleagues to ensure that children thrive and succeed. This ethos is supported by our team of colleagues, which includes former teachers and education leaders, such as myself, with over 140 years of combined experience. Looking at KS4 itself, this is the UK and Ireland's most widely used test of reasoning abilities. It assesses the main types of reasoning ability known to make a difference to learning and achievement. That's verbal, non-verbal, quantitative, and spatial reasoning. KS4 helps to provide a rounded profile of the whole child. For example, a child's verbal skills may be obvious in the classroom, but that's really only part of the story. Looking at data from across the reasoning domains is a first step to identifying and nurturing the student's strengths and in other parts of the wider curriculum, helping you to identify your future scientists and engineers and other areas of excellence. KS4 standardised on almost 25,000 students, and it offers an accurate baseline for your students against national benchmarks and can include optional future performance indicators for national tests and examinations. In addition to the benefits of using KS4 to support indicators of future performance, looking beyond that mean standard age score, the data can also be used as an important first step in identifying strengths and challenges in the classroom, and also potential barriers to learning. By measuring reasoning ability, these are skills which are not related to a school curriculum. KS4 provides an invaluable view of a learner that is not always noticeable in the classroom or through attainment tests. This is particularly meaningful when considered alongside other data. The mean standard age score, or SAS, is a good place to start when looking for general trends across a group or between cohorts over time to understand how you might perhaps need to address an incoming cohort a little differently to the one that went before it. But also to better understand individual learners, we would really encourage colleagues to look beyond that mean SAS. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples. This learner has got an overall mean SAS of 102, which if you look at the guide underneath, that's very much in the average range. So 100 is right in the middle. That's the median of the whole profile. And these three stay nines here, 4, 5, and 6, going from roughly 89 to 111, are very much in the average range. And then you've got above average, very high, below average, and very low. So this learner with their mean SAS of 102 is very much in the average range, and also has the individual standard scores for the 4 areas of reasoning also sit within that average range. Whereas this learner, who does have an average, a mean SAS of 93, which sits within the average range, although somewhat lower than the previous student, they have a verbal standardized score of 84, which is below average. That's sitting here in stay 9.3 in this below average domain. You can use the filters in your HTML report, or you can take the Excel report and add some conditional formatting to help quickly identify these learners with particular strengths and or challenges which could have implications for accessing the curriculum. This student, for example, with a low verbal reasoning ability is likely to have difficulty and some barriers to accessing the curriculum in all areas, and may also be an early indication of a possible barrier to learning. We describe learners as having an even or an uneven profile in KS4. Those with scores that are broadly aligned, like Jonah, would be described as having an even profile. This indicates no one area of specific or relative challenge. Harmeet, however, has a discrepancy between their highest and their lowest SAS, which makes their profile uneven or spiky. This indicates that they have a relative challenge here in the area of verbal reasoning. It is possible to have an even profile that's average, like Jonah. His scores sit within that average range, or above average or below average, the latter indicating a general low reasoning ability. Similarly, an uneven profile may indicate a different area of particular strength or challenge. So each profile should therefore be considered in the context of wider evidence. So there are a number of ways that you can put this into context and work out what your next steps will be. So really recommend that you look at the individual report for teachers to get an idea of exactly what their profile is. You can look at the number of questions attempted in each battery, and this might provide insight into how well each score reflects each student's true ability. You can also look at the confidence bands to check whether above or below average scores could have been average in different circumstances. Consider what the student's cognitive strengths and weaknesses might mean for his or her learning. How can you best support the student? And there are also available individual reports for parents that can be shared with parents, which will explain some of the challenges and some of the strengths of their child, and perhaps some ideas around which areas of the curriculum they might be needing more help with or feeling less comfortable with, and some tips about how to help with homework. There are also individual reports for students to help them understand their own profile. It's really important to consider what the student's cognitive strengths and weaknesses mean for their learning, and what support mitigations can you put in place, and the profile summary and the implications for teaching and learning within that individual report for teachers will really help with that. You can also read our KS4 strategies for learning, which is available on our support website, to help develop and implement strategies for learning, and also to remove any currently held educational myths around fixed learning styles. For customers using at least 2 of our assessments, your key results data from KS4 can be viewed alongside progress test series, NGRT, NGST, pass, and a whole school level, select subgroups, or individual student level. Using these data insights helps you to target individuals and key groups in need of intervention and support teachers in using the data to improve teaching and learning. Staff can feel well supported in evidence-based conversations, which is obviously really key now in modern education, and to have those conversations with parents and use those insights that are easier to contextualize and communicate. Here's a snapshot of that data dashboard, and here you can see the KS4 data alongside some NGRT, pass, progress test in English, progress test in maths, and progress test in science. You'll find everything in one place and easy to understand, and you can make adjustments by using the filters, or for example, adding in the content breakdown so you can see scores from the 4 different batteries, and you can change the range of the year groups that you're looking at. So it's quite an interesting place to look at how your cohorts stack up against each other in terms of the average reasoning ability. Here, it's really clear to see that my pre-A students which is my year 2 students, sorry, my year 3 students they've got an average score which is interestingly above the other year groups that come before them. And then also looking at the small through school, looking at my 6th formers here, they've got a much lower reasoning profile than the students within the main body of the school. So they're going to need a very different approach to support their teaching and learning. You can also focus in on a particular pupil and go into the whole pupil view. And that's an ideal resource when you've got concerns about what there might be in terms of potential barriers or ways of working that are not really supporting the student's progress. Having a look again at the training and assessment insights part of our support site, there's a section dedicated to training. And here we can see all of the different SEND training as well as the KS4 training to guide you on the best ways to use your data. It's in here that you'll find the KS4 Learner Guide with an accompanying video to clarify the purpose and functionality of the resource. We've touched upon the potential for perhaps a verbal discrepancy or bias, but what about the other discrepant profiles or those with particularly high or low general ability? We've got 8 illustrative examples in the KS4 Learner Guide, which helps us to better understand the learner's individual profile of ability, strengths and challenges and how they might best be supported. A great place to further understand some commonalities amongst your learners is to learn a little more about each battery. I'll just wait for that to catch up. So I can go into the information about the spatial battery, and here I can see what the questions will look like, a sense of how this is assessed, and then also to see how this might look in the classroom for a learner that has a relative strength or those that might experience some challenge. We'll be focusing on the profiles themselves, but whether you're a member of the senior or middle leadership team, a teacher or Senko, your KS4 data can add powerful insights regarding personalising learning in your school. So do take a moment to check out our top tips, and that QR code on the bottom right of the slide will take you directly to our KS4 Learner Guide. Going to look now at a student in particular. So if we look at Dasani, who's, if we compare her verbal and non-verbal scores, so the verbal score here and the non-verbal score here, we can see quite a discrepancy with a lower verbal SAS. You could describe that as a verbal deficit. Although it would be for each school to consider their own threshold for action, we'd anticipate learners with a SAS difference of 10 or more as needing further consideration and possible intervention. It's worth noting that EAL learners would typically be expected to find greater challenge reasoning with words in English, and therefore one of the first questions colleagues should ask themselves of a learner with a discrepant verbal and non-verbal profile is whether EAL could be influencing these results and to what degree. You'll see that each learner has their own story and a series of key considerations that could help you to make some adjustments to personalised learning. Whilst we're here, let's take a moment to think about the value KS4 could add when identifying learners as gifted, which adds another layer of information alongside your analysis of curriculum attainment. Okay, Amy could be a good example. She may even be twice exceptional, gifted with SEND. We can see she has an extreme verbal bias, and we also know that she is a good conceptual thinker, but her written work is out of sync. I've definitely taught a lot of students just like Amy. It might be that she's got difficulties with organisation or self-regulation, but has a vast knowledge about a particular area of interest, a flashes of brilliance in class. Okay. You can explore, please do go in and explore the other profiles that are there and make good use of the guide. So just to finish, I wanted to mention some of the feedback that we've had from some of our schools and trusts who are using both KS4 and the FFT service. And I'll just leave you that quote from the Meridian Academies Trust and hand back to Sean.
Thank you, Sophie. Let me just get my screen up to share. So, beginning. Excellent. Thanks, Sophie. Thanks, Craig. Good morning, everybody. Lovely to join you this morning. My name's Sean Green. I'm a product manager at FFT. Delighted to be with you and to talk to you about this service, which, as Craig and Sophie have said, is really going from strength to strength. From when it started 4 years ago, it becomes a regular part, I think, of people's data calendar, which is great to see. And great to see so many people with us today. So my section is going to be more about the how-to and what you see. So I'm going to talk about how you would actually enter these assessments and then what you would see as a result of entering the assessments. So some of the key things before we go through the actual detail, this turnaround is virtually instant. Once your data is uploaded, you'll have your estimates within minutes, which is hopefully of real benefit to you and being able to get on with the analysis as soon as you can. As we've said several times, we're delighted that estimates will not just figure for GCSEs, but will also appear for vocational qualifications. That's been a key piece of feedback over recent services, and we're delighted that as of last night, that's something that you'll be able to see within your target setting area. And we've also included attendance alongside estimates. I don't think you need me to tell you how high profile attendance is within schools. Our attendance tracker has around 9,000 schools who are sharing weekly data with us. It's a very popular service. We went out for the first time this year last week, so we were pleased to see so many people accessing our reports, and we're going to use that attendance data not just within this service, but alongside our other applications as well. So we want to use our attendance data to support you with estimates, with target setting, but you'll also start to see it across other applications that the FFT have. So the process as to how to do it, the first thing to stress is that you would need administration permissions to complete this. So it's admin users who would be able to complete this task. So you'd log into Aspire as normal. You will go from the side menu on the left-hand side. There's an administration button. And from there, if you click File Exchange, that will take you to where you need to be. And when you get to File Exchange, you've got these two options that you see at the bottom. One is for the 2024 results service. That was our summer results service. And then the second one is the estimate service. And that's the one that you're going to need to be able to use to upload this data. So then once you're there, you need to start thinking about your templates and which test that you're planning to do. So step one is downloading the templates. We've put a link there to GL's guidance on choosing a test level. I've taken a very quick screenshot there showing the different recommended test levels for each year group from 7 through to 11. I know we've had various questions about this in the Q&A. So they're the recommended KS4 levels. So you see that information and then decide which level you're going to do. From there, you can then choose from the 24-25 drop down the year groups that you're going to administer the test with, and then their appropriate levels. And then by pressing download XLSX, that will download you the file, and the file will look like this. So what you'll see is it's already pre-populated. It's taken from the data that you share with us every night in Aspire Data Exchange. So if you've said you're doing this with year 8, we will generate a file for year 8 and subsequent years which you choose to do. So the template looks like this. You can open it in Excel. There are 4 different batteries that you'll be aware of within the Cat4 series of tests: verbal, non-verbal, quantitative, and spatial. And there's a space there for you to input the standardized score for each student for each of those batteries. The valid range is between 59, 100, and 141. Anything that sits outside of that would be rejected as invalid. We can't generate any estimates if there's any blanks. So you do need to complete, please, all four batteries. And as I said, a lot of that is pre-populated, so you'll have information about your school, its DFE number, student, all that kind of basic information will be filled in. All you need to do is to input the 4 separate areas for each of the Cat4 batteries. Once you're happy with that, you need to upload it and send it back to us. So you'd go back to File Exchange, which is where you started in this. So you choose the file. So having downloaded and saved it, you choose the file and then choose Upload and then send it back to us. And again, we do say this every year, but please make sure you're sending us back the completed file and not the blank template that you've downloaded, because we do get quite a few every year. So please make sure you're sending us the completed file. Once that's there, once that's back with us, you will then get a message. And the vast majority of you will see the second upload status option here, which is the green tick saying it's been successful. The other ones, just to sort of pick out the main one, being the upload error, which is the penultimate one there with that looks a bit like a no entry sign. When you see that message saying upload error, it's telling you, as it would seem obvious, that the file contains some errors. We can't use it to generate estimates. But what we would do is we would say these are the errors. It would be in this column or on this row, for example. We're not just saying to you, there's an error, off you go and try and find it. We'd be telling you, you know, this data is invalid, something is wrong here, etc. So it will tell you what the error is, which you can hopefully then rectify and then re-upload back to us, and then the process can begin again. So once we've gone through the successful validation, which will be a fairly quick process, we'll start using that data to generate some Key Stage 4 estimates. It can take a few minutes, but it's a virtually instantaneous turnaround. And once they're ready, you'll get a link through to the target setting module. And we're going to look at the target setting module next, but just and you'll see this screenshot a few times, but just be aware that when you go through there, the default option for estimates is Key Stage 2, but we also have the Cat4 option. So you're going to want to select the Cat4 option, because it's Cat4 data that you're using to generate these estimates. So make sure that you stress that you're showing the estimates based on Cat4 rather than Key Stage 2. So looking at the estimates then, it will take you through to your Aspire homepage, and target setting is very prominent in there. It's in the top right-hand corner. So you can see their next generation target setting. If you click on that, and it will take you through to a series of reports that we're going to look at in a bit more detail now. And the first one of those is the single subject reports. There's a school dashboard, which looks at sort of wider school measures, and the subject dashboard, which, as it would imply, looks at individual subjects. So in this one, we're going to look at a single subject. You could look at multiple. We're going to look at single today, because that seems to be the main one that people would use this for. So in here, again, just a reminder, as I said earlier on, make sure, please, that you've got estimates selected on Cat4, because if not, it won't show you the Cat4 data that you've brought through. So you're selecting estimates based on Cat4. It's a single subject report, and the subject, and it defaults to this at GCSE, is English language. There is the full list of GCSE subject options that are there. They're an A to Z drop down next to English language. You can see the drop down arrow there, but it will default to English language, and that becomes your first key report. So looking at the report in more detail, the indicator, the default indicator there, is percentage at grade 4 or higher. There are other indicators you could use. You could use percentage at grade 5, 6, 7, or 8 or higher. You could look at average point score on a 1 to 9 scale, etc. So there's plenty of other things that you can do with this. It will show all the students with an estimate within English language, which is why you've got this option to drill down further by using year groups and teaching groups, because it's likely you'd want to use this to look at a specific year group and then possibly drill down that bit further and look at specific teaching groups within there. So it would start with the whole picture, but then you can choose which groups, which year groups, which cohorts, which teaching groups you wish to focus on. If you look at the report that we're just looking at on screen at the bottom there, you've got 3 different estimate models on there. You've got FFT 50, FFT 20, FFT 5. There are 3 levels of challenge that you'll be familiar with within FFT. 50th level of challenge, a more challenging level of challenge at FFT 20, and the most challenging at FFT 5. And you can see that the estimates are adjusted based on the level of challenge that you choose. There is a toggle at the bottom left that you can see there, which allows you to change the level of challenge. At this stage, you don't need to, because all we're showing at the minute on this screen is the full composite set of options at FFT 50, 20, and 5. But that will be something that will come into play when you start looking at the different pupils. So at the minute, you can see them all on screen anyway. The other thing that you can do on here is you could go down further into pupil groups. So you can select combinations of these groups. So you could select FSM boys, you could select high attaining girls. And again, each school has a different context. Each school has different groups that they're really focused on, perhaps because of previous results or historical strengths or weaknesses in certain areas. So that's what you can use this pupil context filter to do. I did talk about the 50-25 toggle. As I said, at this stage on this screen, because we're only seeing the top half of the report, you don't really need it. But when you come to see the pupil reports, that's when it will become really vital to use that. And this brings us to the pupil report. So what we can see on here then is individual pupils and a lot of information around them. And I'm going to take you through this and show you each different part of it. So on the left-hand side, we can see contextual information, prior attainment information. So it will point out if a student is either FSM 6, EAL, SEN. It will look at their prior attainment band. And it will also on here show that the different levels of attainment from the KS4 test that you've submitted. So you've got the 4 scores across the 4 batteries there, the verbal, the non-verbal, the quantitative, and the spatial. And you've also got the mean KS score. And just going back to what Sophie said earlier, just remember that it's really important to look beyond the mean KS because there could be quite a lot of spikiness across the profile. So it's really important to look at the 4 individual batteries as well. So you've got background information, contextual information, and then some KS4 attainment information. And then this is where you see our chances information. So what we've done in this example here, and just to reiterate, all the data you're seeing today is just being purely invented for the purpose of today's webinar. But in this example here, we've taken a student, we have found students with similar prior KS4 attainment. And from that, we have looked at the chances of them achieving each of the 1 to 9 grades that are prevalent at GCSE. So you've got the 1 to 9 grades from left to right. We can see that based on, again, similar performing pupils, the most likely outcome for this student is a grade 3, 37% likelihood of that outcome. But we also show you the risk of that becoming a lower grade. So we look at the 1 and the 2 grades, and we add up that combination there, and that comes to 38%. We then look at the grades higher than a 3, so 4, 5, 6 in this case, and that comes to 25%. So it will show you what we think is the most likely estimate, but then the risk of the lower grade and also the chance of the higher grade. This is where the toggle in the bottom left is really useful because you've got the 50, 20, and 5 option there. So you can look at different levels of challenge. And if you chose a higher level of challenge, then the estimates and the chances would adjust accordingly. The other thing to say on here is the target column. That's where you would put in the target. And again, a lot of schools would base it around the estimates, but we would, in this situation, bow down to your greater knowledge. You know the students very well. So it might be that knowing what you know about the student, even though the estimate is a 3, the target of a 5 or a 6 might be realistic. Or it might be that there's something going on that you know about that means that the target is actually slightly reduced. But again, that's up to you to input the targets. We will just show you the chances and the estimates there on the grid that you can see. The other thing that we've added in here is some information around attendance. So attendance is a very popular feature that we have across FFT. Attendance tracker goes out to almost 9,000 schools, Very widely used set of reports, very popular set of reports that we have. And what we've done is we've taken some of the pupil attendance data from there and brought it across to this target setting module. So when it says year-to-date attendance, it will show you the most up-to-date live figure that we have for that student. It generally goes to the end of the previous week, and it will show you a comparison to that year group. So you've got to the left of the figure, you've got green and reds in some cases. What they do is they indicate the difference, if any, between that student's attendance and the figure for that year group. And it is year group specific because we know that particularly at secondary school, there are some quite significant differences in attendance from one year group to the next. So in this example here, it's year 10. So we can see the students who have got a red next to their attendance figure, their attendance is below that of other students in year 10. Students with a green, their attendance is higher than that of other students in year 10. And the darker the colour, the bigger the difference. So the darker the green, the higher above, the darker the red, the bigger gap there is between them and the actual average attendance for year 10. We've also got what we're calling some alerts. So we will show you under PA any students who are persistently absent. That's to say their attendance is 90% or below. SA would indicate severely absent students whose attendance is 50% or below. And then the R category is something that we've brought in. R stands for risk. And what we're saying with that is there is a risk of that student becoming a persistent absentee. So their attendance sits just over 90%, but between 90 and 92%. Because with these students, all it would take is a day here and there for them to become a persistently absent student. And as Craig showed right at the start, you can see the absolute clear link between attendance and outcomes, which is why we think it's important, in addition to all this other information, to bring in some up-to-date attendance information for you to see. As Craig said, we're absolutely delighted that last night we're able to release to you vocational reports as well. So again, it is virtually identical. We didn't want to reinvent the wheel with this. We know that the GCSE report is very well used and very well understood. So we've tried to replicate it for vocational. So what you'll see on here, instead of it saying GCSE, it will say vocational. And in this example here, we're looking at animal care. There is again a drop down, A to Z drop down of all the relevant vocational subjects. The indicator that we've chosen is level 2 pass or higher. That becomes the default indicator. Other indicators that sit on here are merit or higher and distinction or higher. And again, it will show you all the different outcomes at FFT 50, 20 and 5. And toggling between them, that will impact, as we've just seen on the pupil report. Just like in the other reports, again, you can go into year groups, you can go into teaching groups, you can go into different context groups as well, so you can apply those if that's something that you really want to drill into. And the single subject report here, the pupils report, looks virtually identical to the report that we've just seen. You have the CAT information, you've got the attendance information, but the chances of each grade, as you'd expect, are slightly different because instead of this being on a 1 to 9 scale, we're using the different outcomes that apply to vocational subjects. So you have a percentage chance of reaching a level 1 outcome, and then level 2 is broken down into pass, merit, distinction, and distinction star. And just as with the previous one, we've gone back over similar pupils with similar CAT attainment within this subject, and we've put in our most likely estimate. We've put the chance of that being a lower grade, we've put the chance of that being a higher grade as well. But again, this is up to you as a school to decide which target you're going to apply. But we're delighted to be able to share with you these chances information and the updated vocational reports on there. The last reports I'm just going to look at briefly are within the school dashboard. So these are now going beyond a pupil measure. These are looking at wider measures. So you can see on here, we've got attainment 8 estimates for an overall attainment 8 grade. And then you've got the different pillars of attainment 8, so English, Maths, EBAC, and Open. So it will show you on here, again, you've got the 50-25 option, but it will show you on here the different option, the different estimates for the different pillars of attainment 8. If you go to the pupil overview, and again, you've got the option to select year groups, but by going into the pupil overview on here and the pupil report, what you can see is the background information. So again, contextual information, FSM, EAL, SEN, prior attainment, etc. You have the CAT information on there. You'll have attendance information on there. But what you will have also is this range of indicators. So you've got the attainment 8 overall, and then its component pillars. You've got entry information, so entries for EBAC, entries for open, again, based on similar pupils. You've got the basics information at 4+ for English and Maths and at 5+ for English and Maths, and then a probability of achieving 5 or more GCSE grades between 7 and 9, because a lot of schools say that they find this a really useful indicator to see the overall spread of grades and how well they're achieving at the top end. Again, we're going into a bit of an unknown for the next 2 years with no Progress 8 for 2025 and 2026. Craig has explained the kind of the interim solution that we're proposing. We're also going to continue to show a range of different measures, so you've got a really strong handle on how your students are performing. So that's the pupil overview report as well. Okay. I hope that's given you a good insight into how to upload the data and what kind of data you'll see having already uploaded it. When I wasn't presenting, I was looking at quite a few questions that were coming through. I saw some around, can this be applied for all year groups? Can you enter data for all year groups? Yes, you can. There's different levels of CAT tests, levels D through to G, for year 7 through to year 11, and I put a screenshot on screen around that. There was a question around vocationals, which obviously was preempting the presentation I was going to do by showing the different vocational ones. Obviously, I've been out of the loop for the final bit of the presentation, so I'm just going to bring Craig and Sophie in and just see if there's any questions that you'd want to share that came through. Not a problem if not, but like I said, rather than open up the Q&A now, if there's anything that you'd like to share. Craig, Sophie?
Craig, there was a question that came into the Q&A that I really wanted you to answer. It's from Rupert. Can you explain the merit of using FFT generated benchmarks instead of just using the KS4 GCSE of challenge grade?
Sure. Yeah. So I think you'd use these in combination. But what I would say is the additional information you will get with the estimates within the system is the percentage chances of pupils achieving each grade, and also the different challenge bars that you can use to say, let's base it on the top 50 percentile, top 20 percentile, and top 5 percentile, and take into account information from your own school. So I'd use them to complement each other, and then I think you'll get that more granular level around what percentage chance pupils have of getting each grade based on their KS4 data. Is that okay, Sophie? Anything to sort of add on that one, or?
That's great. Thank you, Craig.
No problem. I have been answering a lot whilst we've been going along, but I'll answer a few that are just coming in. One around when will I get year 7 estimates based on Key Stage 2? We'll provide these as soon as we get the data from the Department for Education. So we will receive that and tend to receive it September, October time. It hasn't arrived yet. As soon as it does arrive, we'll load that up and you'll get estimates for your year 7 cohort. That's where the data comes from. Another question was asking, where does that data come from? Do you have to upload it? No. We'll get that from the DFE and we'll load those for you as soon as we receive it. I think there were some questions around, can we get T-level information at Key Stage 5? It's not available in the system yet, but it's on our development roadmap. Is the webinar going to be emailed? Yes, you'll get a link, hopefully later today or tomorrow, with a video of the webinar. I'll continue to come back on some of these, but I don't think there's any that have been frequent questions. I think we had a question around getting into upload estimates into the system. I'd use the target setting area. We know there's an issue with one of the links in the admin area at the moment where it's taking you through to assessments and not actually the file exchange area. If you go into target setting, you'll be able to get in that, and we will fix that link as well. I don't know if there's anything else coming up, Sean, that you wanted to answer.
They were the main ones. As I said, I was sort of answering before I was presenting, and so I just wanted to see if anything major had come up in the interim. The one thing I would say is that beyond this, if there's any further queries, there are contact details there for our support teams, both at FFT and at GL. So there's phone numbers, there's email addresses there. So anything that hasn't been answered or that won't be answered by reviewing the presentation, etc., then please do get in touch. Anything school specific, as Craig said at the start, obviously that's the best route to go down anyway. As we said, we'll get copies of slides, recordings, etc., out to you as soon as we can. I hope that's been a useful session. It's been fantastic to see so many people here again. We had a session on Tuesday with similarly large numbers, so it's great to see that this service continues to interest people. We think it's a really vital tool to be able to get these estimates and then to assess how your students are doing. We work very closely with GL, and we sincerely hope that we continue to do so, and we hope that you continue to find the services that we and GL provide helpful for you in your day-to-day business in schools. Anything else from Craig? Sophie?
Yeah, I think that I'll answer a couple that are just coming in.
Okay, hot off the press.
I think Sue's asked, why is the file upload closed? So if you give us a shout, we'll have a look at that for you. It should not be closed. You should be able to upload your data now. So if you drop an email into the support desk, I can look at that for you. Will there be estimates for future vocational subjects? Yes, as soon as we can calculate those, we'll calculate those for you. And if there's any subjects or qualifications that count towards headline measures, we can do that for you. How often do estimates change? So estimates, we tend to refresh every year, and we'll work closely with GL to do that on the basis of the CAT estimates as well, to take into account latest national performance. So you will get the latest national data based on how pupils are performing, because it does tend to change a little bit each year. So we update them each year, but only once a year when we get that full data set through, or when we work closely with GL. I think I've answered the one around Key Stage 5, that we will look to provide estimates for vocational and T levels for Key Stage 5 as well. It's on our roadmap. And I think that's everything. So if there is anything specific or I've missed anything, please do send us an email in and we can pick that up. And I think, as Sean said, thank you very much for taking the time out to join us today. We really appreciate it. Hope you found it useful, and we look forward to seeing you at future webinars. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, Craig. Thanks, Sophie. Have a good day, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.